My own daughter betrayed me. The same little girl I gave my heart to, my health, my best years. She took the only thing I had left after my husband died, and she did it looking me straight in the eyes without flinching. My name is Linda Morrison. I am 61 years old. And there are still nights when I wake up not knowing where I am, reaching out with my hand for the cold wall of a stranger's room, thinking, is this my life? Is this how everything I gave ends up? But I want to tell you from the very beginning, because this story doesn't start with the betrayal. It starts with love, with that kind of love that aches in your chest when you remember it because you know it was real, because you know you lived it with everything you had, even if the other person stomped on it like it meant nothing. When my daughter Ashley was born, I was 27 years old. I remember that day like it was this morning. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. Robert was squeezing my hand and crying openly, that serious man who never cried in front of anyone, and I looked at that tiny pink wrinkled face and thought, there she is. This is what I was born for. For her. Robert was a good man. Not perfect, no. He had his beer on Fridays, forgot anniversaries, sometimes raised his voice when he got nervous, but he worked. God, how he worked. 32 years at the plant, from 6 in the morning, with calluses on his hands and a back pain he never once got treated because he didn't want to miss his shift. We lived on a tight budget, a very tight budget, but we saved. Dollar by dollar, paycheck by paycheck, sacrifice by sacrifice. This apartment cost us everything. We didn't take a vacation for 10 years. We bought clothes once a year, before Christmas, and only what we absolutely needed. I sewed the curtains by hand, painted the walls myself. We laid the floors on weekends together, Robert and I on our knees with our hands full of cement, laughing because we didn't really know what we were doing, but we were doing it together. We didn't just put money into those walls. We put our youth in there, our dreams, our future, and we spoiled Ashley. I'll admit it. We probably gave her more than we could afford. The brand name backpack when all the other kids had one. The extra English tutoring so she could get into college. College itself, which Robert and I paid for by cutting back on food, cutting back on clothes, cutting back on everything except the love we gave her. Ashley never heard the word no, or almost never. She grew up beautiful, smart, confident, sometimes too confident. But I thought, that's a good thing. She's not going to suffer the way I suffered. She's going to know what she wants and she's going to get it. I was proud. What a fool I was. She graduated from college, found a job, and then she found Brandon. Brandon. Even his name sounds cold to me now. He showed up in our lives about 3 years ago. Handsome, I'll give him that. Always. Well-dressed, always with the right words. He called me Miss Linda and gave a little polite nod when we met. Robert told me from the very beginning, I don't like that man. I told him, you're just an overprotective dad. Robert said, there's something dishonest in his eyes. I didn't listen. I wish I had listened. Then Robert got sick. The stroke happened on a Thursday morning. I was making eggs when I heard the thud in the bathroom. I ran. And while I was running, my heart already knew something had broken forever. The 2 years that followed were the hardest of my life. Robert first in bed, then sitting up, then learning to walk again with a cane, like a child starting from scratch. I took care of him day and night. I didn't sleep properly for 2 years. I bathed him, I fed him. I read to him out loud because he loved the sound of my voice reading. I told him stories about the neighborhood, about the news, about the neighbors, so he wouldn't feel alone inside that body that no longer obeyed him the way it used to. Ashley came on weekends sometimes. Brandon came rarely. He was very busy, she said. When Robert died, I had already been alone for a while, because in those last months I watched him leave little by little. First he stopped recognizing certain things, then certain people, but he always recognized me. Until the very last day he would look at me and say, Linda, just that, Linda. And that was enough for me. He died on a Tuesday morning with rain outside. I was holding his hand. I kissed his forehead. I told him everything was okay, that he could go, that I was going to be fine. I lied. I didn't know if I was going to be fine, but he deserved to go in peace. At the funeral, Ashley cried. Brandon cried too. I thought, they're good people. They love us. God, how naive I was. 3 months passed after Robert's death. 3 months walking through the apartment, hearing his voice in every corner. 3 months sleeping on his side of the bed, hugging his pillow that no longer smelled like him. 3 months of a pain so deep that sometimes I would sit down on the kitchen floor without knowing why and just stay there, simply stay there, because I didn't have the strength to get up. One Saturday, Ashley came over with Brandon. I was so happy to see them. I cooked, I set the table nicely, I even put on a blouse I liked. I needed so badly to have them close. We ate, we talked, and then Brandon pulled some papers out of his briefcase and placed them on the table in front of me. I asked what they were. Ashley wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her plate. Brandon spoke in that calm, even, cold voice that I still hear at night. These are documents for the transfer of the apartment. Your husband signed them before he passed. The property goes into Ashley's name. We just need you to sign your portion. I didn't understand right away. I read it once. Then again. Then I raised my eyes toward my daughter. Ashley, what is this? She finally looked at me, and do you know what was the most terrible thing of all? The thing I cannot forget no matter how much I want to. She wasn't crying. She was looking at me calmly, with a coldness I did not recognize on her face, that face I had kissed thousands of times. Mom, this is our home now. We're going to live here. You yourself always said the apartment is too big for one person. I said, Ashley, every single tile on this floor was laid by your father's hands. Your bedroom is here, the one where you grew up. I'm going to live here until the end of my life. That's what your father and I agreed. Brandon said, Look, Miss Linda, the paperwork is all in order. Your husband signed everything legally. We don't want to make a scene out of this. You can stay here another month while you find somewhere else. 1 month. 1 month to leave the home I built over 30 years. I looked at Ashley and said in a low voice, so quietly it was almost a whisper, Do you remember when your dad couldn't sleep at night? Because you had a fever? Do you remember when he worked a double shift to buy you that jacket you wanted so badly? Do you remember when I sold my earrings, the only ones I had left from my mother, to pay for your semester? She said nothing. I stood up from the table. My legs were shaking so badly I had to hold onto the chair, and then something broke inside me, something that had been held together since Robert's funeral, since those months of taking care of him, since an entire lifetime of staying quiet and holding on and pushing forward, and I screamed. I screamed like I had never screamed in my life. I said things I'm not going to repeat here because I'm ashamed I said them, even though in that moment I felt them with my whole body. I told her I had given her my entire life, everything, that I had kept nothing for myself, that I had sacrificed my health and my dreams and my time and my youth for her. And how could she do this to me? How could she look me in the face and take the only thing I had left of Robert, the only thing I had left of an entire lifetime of work? Ashley cried. She finally cried. But she didn't stand up. She sat there crying while Brandon held her hand, and in that moment I understood something that chilled me to the bone. He had more power over her than I did. He had won. They left that night, but the papers stayed on the table. The weeks that followed were pure darkness. I wasn't eating properly. I called Ashley and she didn't answer. I called again and again and again. One afternoon she picked up and said, Mom, I love you, but we need this apartment. Brandon has a loan. We can't pay rent and a loan at the same time. You're still young. You can find a room somewhere. Young. I am 61 years old. My knees hurt. I have a pension that covers food and medication in a good month. Young. There were nights when I sat by the window and had very dark thoughts. I'm not going to hide it because I believe that if someone else has had those thoughts, they need to know they're not alone. I thought that maybe it would be better if I wasn't here, that I had already lived the best of my life and now I had been thrown out like an old piece of furniture that no longer fits the decor. Robert was gone. My daughter was gone. The apartment was going. What was left? But one night my friend Diane called. I picked up because I didn't have the strength not to. She heard my voice and came over immediately. She brought food, she brought cheap wine, she brought her quiet presence sitting beside me on the kitchen floor. We stayed like that until morning. She said, Linda, you don't have the right to give up. Not for her sake, for yours. Diane helped me find a lawyer. The lawyer looked over the documents and told me something that made my hands tremble. Robert's signature on several of the papers was dated on days when he was already hospitalized from the stroke, when he physically could not hold a pen, when doctors had his critical condition on record. That meant one thing: forgery. I didn't want to sue my own daughter. God, how badly I didn't want to do it. I cried before every hearing. I prayed she would call, that she would regret it, that a text would come through saying, "Mom, I'm sorry. Mom, it was a mistake. Mom, I love you." I would have forgiven her. I would have let them both live there with me. I would have found a way. But she stayed silent. The trial lasted 8 months. 8 months living on Diane's couch with a suitcase and the clothes I managed to grab before they changed the locks. 8 months going to hearings and watching my daughter across the room, searching her face for the little girl I used to braid hair for on Sunday mornings. I couldn't find her. In her place was a woman who wouldn't look at me, who took notes in her notebook like this was a routine office procedure, like I was a stranger. Brandon hired a good lawyer, a very good one. But the evidence was on my side. The medical records, the testimony of the nurses who had cared for Robert, the doctor's signed statement confirming, on those dates, Robert did not have the motor capacity to sign documents. He could not do it. What was on those papers was a lie built to take my home away from me. The judge ruled in my favor. I came back to the apartment on a Tuesday with rain falling, just like the Tuesday Robert died. I walked in and smelled someone else's perfume and someone else's life in every room. They had changed the curtains. They had taken down our wedding photo from the wall. They had put in new furniture, modern furniture, as if they wanted to erase every trace of what this place had been. I sat down on the floor of the empty living room and cried for a long time, but these were different tears. Not from despair, from something ending, from something I know I will never be able to get back, even though I got these walls back, even though I hung our photo again, even though I put up the same curtains as before. Ashley called that same night, the first time in 8 months. She said, "Mom." I said, "What?" She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "Brandon left. He left as soon as he heard the verdict. He said it wasn't worth the effort." I said nothing. She said, "Mom, I'm sorry." I said, "Me too." I hung up. I don't know what's going to happen between us. I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at her and not remember those papers on the table, her cold face, her silence in the courtroom. I don't know if I'll be able to truly forgive her, not just say the words, but actually feel it. People say forgiveness is for you, not for them. Maybe they're right. But I'm not ready yet. What I do know is this. I am standing. I am in my apartment. This morning, I hung our wedding photo back on the same nail where it always was. I bought curtains just like the ones we had before. I made coffee and drank it alone in the quiet, looking out at the street, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood I know by heart. Robert used to say, "Linda, you're made of steel." I would laugh. I thought he was exaggerating. Now I understand he simply knew me better than I knew myself. I survived. Not because I'm strong, but because I had no other choice. Because these walls hold my laughter and my tears and my prayers from 30 years, and they didn't let me go. Because Diane didn't let me go. Because something inside me, something small and stubborn and unyielding, refused to go dark completely. If you have been through something like this, if someone you loved with everything you had paid you back with a betrayal you didn't deserve, if you ever found yourself alone in a stranger's room, wondering whether it was worth going on, write to me in the comments. I read every single one. Because no one should carry this pain in silence. No one. And if today you feel like you're at the very bottom, I want you to know that the bottom has a floor, and from there you can push yourself back up. I am proof of that.